For this mock exercise, we're going to take a look at process costing. And the case that we're going to do is called Larson Corporation. And we're going to take a look at it from the perspective of a weighted average method. As you recall, for process costing, we have essentially two methods that's available to us. One is called the FIFO, and the other one's called the weighted average. This video has to be reviewed along with two other videos, and the two other videos will have Larson Corporation name on it, and the second video that follows this is essentially taking what we've done using the weighted average, and we're going to actually do the journal entries that's behind the scenes as we try to capture the cost of producing the product. And then the third video will be using the other method called FIFO. So let's take a look at the question. Larson manufactures car seats. Each car seat passes through the assembly line and the testing department. So there are two departments. This problem focuses on the assembling department only. The process cost system at Larson has a single cost driver, direct material, and a single indirect cost driver, conversion cost. So there's really only two categories of cost. Direct materials are added at the beginning of the process, and the conversion costs are added evenly during the process. When the assembly department finalizes work on each car seat, it immediately transfers to the testing department. So I want you to imagine these car seats are being assembled, and then once they go through that work in progress from the assembly department, it's going to get transferred to the testing department, where they too will have their own work in progress T account. So this is only focusing really on the assembly department. Now, it says when the assembly department finishes the work on each seat, is mentioned. Okay, so Larson uses the weighted average. So in this question, it's the weighted average method of processing cost. And these are the data for 2012. So let's take a look at the data. So the first data says that we have work in progress at the beginning of the year, and at the beginning of October, and we have 5,000 car seats that's still in progress. And how much materials have we incurred? We have incurred $1,250,000 worth of material, and then the conversion cost is $402,750. Now, we're told that the conversion cost is 60% complete. That means that in the current month, in the month of October, we need to complete 40% of these work in progress, and then it goes through the actual testing department. Now, here are how many goods were started in October, the month of October. So altogether, we have 25 units to account for. 25,000 units. Now, of the 25,000, how many were completed? We're told that 22,500 were completed, which means that 2,500 is still remaining in work in progress at the end of the month. Now, we are told that those have 70% conversion cost, meaning we've incurred 70%, and again, for the month of November, we're going to finish off 30% of these car seats before it goes into the testing department. And these are the added costs for October. Now, the first required asks us to calculate cost category, compute the equivalent units of work done in October. And then it says show physical units in the first column of the schedule. So what they're really asking us to do is step 1 and 2 of the 5-step in process costing. This part 2 says For each category, summarize the total assembly department for October and calculate the cost per equivalent unit. So what they're asking us to do in part 2 is essentially perform step 3 to 5, actually step 3 and 4 of the 5-step in process costing. And then, of course, in the third part of the required, they want us to determine the total cost of units completed and transferred out to the units in ending inventory. So this is essentially step 5 of the 5-step process. Okay? Just wanted you guys to think about that. All right? So let's do the question. Let's solve the question. So first of all, let's determine the flow of production. Okay. What was the work in progress beginning? So October 1st. We know that the physical units, we had 5,000 units. And how many were started in October? We had 20,000. So we know that we have 25,000 units to account for. And by the way, what I'm doing right now is what we called step 1. So this is step 1 of the 5-step approach to process costing. Now, we need to analyze what happened to these 25,000 units. We know that these units were completed in October. How many were there? There were 22,500 units. That means the difference would be the 2,500 units that are sitting in work in progress. That's step 1. Now step 2 requires us to calculate the equivalent units. So equivalent units basically means what is the number of equivalent. So obviously some of these are partially completed and some of these are partially completed. We want to know in total what are the equivalent units that we finished essentially for the month of October. So this is really step 2. We need to calculate this, and again, step 2 of the 5-step approach. In this one, we're going to have direct materials and conversion costs, because those are the only 2 categories. So the 22,500, we're going to assume that that's all completed, because it says completed in October, so the equivalent units is 22,500. Of the 2,500, you'll see that how many of these were complete, how many raw materials were actually consumed to complete those sitting in work in progress. We know that we were told that the direct materials are added at the beginning of the process. It actually says that, which means that we know that as soon as the car seats are in the assembling department, all of that materials would have been consumed. So I'm going to write 2,500 times 100%. Now, for the conversion cost, we are told that they are 70% complete. 70% degree of completion is 70% for those ending work in progress. So it's going to be 2,500 times 70%. And that gives us 1,750. So the equivalent units for raw material is 2,500 and 24,250. Now, we need to do step 3. And step 3, we need to analyze all the costs incurred. In the weighted average, we actually just going to add what's sitting in work in progress beginning with all of the costs incurred. And that's essentially because we're going to average out the production costs in the month of, let's say, the prior month, September, and the current month, October. That's what the weighted average method is all about. So step 3 is we're going to analyze the total cost. So the work in progress cost that was sitting in October 1st, and this was given to us, by the way, was direct material is $1,250,000 and $402,750. Now, I'm going to write the word total here because I just like to get, so I want to redo these columns. So maybe what I'll do is I'll highlight, and then maybe I'll highlight this one in yellow. Try to make it as easy to identify as possible. Okay, so let me just highlight this. Now, what was the actual cost incurred in October? So this is what we need to add, right? We added $4.5 million. This was given to us. And $2,337,500. Altogether, $6,837,500. So this is $2,740,250. $5,750,000. And this one is $8,490,250. This is total cost. Now, step 4 requires us to then determine the unit cost. The cost, unit cost per equivalent unit. That's exactly what we're going to do next. This is step 4. And how do we determine that? We're going to take these costs So let me write down the total again, the headings. Then we're going to divide this by the equivalent units from step 2. And that would be these numbers, right? That's step 2. That would be divided by 25,000 units, and this one divided by 24,250. You get a per unit of 230 and 113. This is step 4. And the 5th step requires us to then assign the cost. So really we're answering these steps, and that's essentially what you need to go through, because ultimately that's our goal. Is item number 3 is how much should we assign for the goods that have been completed in the assembly line. It has to move over to the testing department. So therefore, we need to know how much of that cost gets to move, because presumably the testing department has their own cost that they're going to incur that's going to be added to the cost of these car seats. So we need to be able to itemize that. So how many costs were completed? I don't know if I have enough room here to do step 5, but I will try here. So step 5 says, let's figure out how to cost these car seats. So the number of goods completed, we know that was 22,500. We know that because that came from, right, that came from here. So just wanted to show you, that came from that line, right? Completed in October. So we're going to take, for this one, we know that's $22,500 times $230. Okay, and this one is $22,500 times $113. And this one is, if we add these two, we're going to get a number, $7,717,500. So this is the total that we're going to transfer from the assembling department to the testing department. Now, how much should be sitting in work in progress? We know there were 2,500 units. Okay. And how much are we going to do that? Well, we know we've got to take 2,500 that's sitting there, right? Times $230 plus 1,750. So I'm getting it from this line here, right? 1,750 times 113. So those two are going to add to the 772,750. So the total is going to be 8,490,250, which is exactly equal to step 3. Okay? So I wanted you guys to see that this total cost, we're trying to figure out how much of these total costs are going to go to the working progress still remaining for the end of October. So that's going to be our opening balance for November when we do this question again. Let's say we do a follow-up question. And how much of the total cost is going to the next department called the testing department, in which they're going to, again, accumulate more of their cost until it gets to the finished goods and cost of goods sold. Okay? Thank you.